You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need and not what you don't.
Tony Caravan with you here for another show.
Good morning.
Today's show is going to be...
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
And let's remember...
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
That's right. We're cattle on their tax farm. I'm experimenting with this microphone closer up to my mouth today. Now, I have no idea if there's going to be a constant clicking beyond the cow in the background. So anyway, well, I guess that's how a lot of us feel, right? That's how a lot of us feel. Being cattle on a tax farm. You know, in the description of this show, and it's rather a cold start, we'll get right into it. I say perhaps the word surreal is overused these days, but after all, it is what it is. And if you've noticed the title card, probably maybe the reason some people clicked on this is because of the dolly clocks. And you know, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into this idea of how absurd, how surreal things have become, but yet at the same time, how commonplace they've been allowed to just enter the human consciousness, enter, you know, the media, enter the public consciousness, I guess I should say, and just be accepted as norms. You know, and the idea that we're all walking on eggshells because we're afraid to criticize the surreal, the absurdity of what's going on right before our eyes, what's unfolding right before our eyes. You know, in times gone by, people like Dolly, you know, they would paint something, and you know, and because that's what they saw. They saw this how surreal things were becoming. You know, these people, artists, are way ahead of their time. You know, even Picasso towards, you know, in later years. And you know, today, you know, you've talked to the average young person who's, you know, who's not a student of, you know, art history, who has never been to an art gallery. And they don't even know, they couldn't even name off, you know, five artists, you know, fine artists. And but they could name off 5 journalists, I bet, so-called journalists. They could name off 5 politicians, I bet. They could probably even name off 5, you know, social justice warriors, or some sort of 5 doctors who appeared on TV on a regular basis. But they can't rattle off the names of artists, composers, classical composers, architects, great thinkers, people who've altered the course of history. Because that's not what the focus is anymore. The education system doesn't focus on that. That's for specialized education in the sense of either the very wealthy and privileged who just get that as their normal curriculum, or those who have maybe parents that brought them up a certain way to appreciate fine art and an understanding of days gone by and the passage of time. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. The passage of time, space time, and how surreal everything is right now. I have to admit, my inspiration for this was a comment by someone I know. That I accidentally read. Because I don't read, for the most part, anything on social media at all. Except this is going to make a little noise. I'm going to try to move this microphone down a tad. Forgive me for doing this live. I bet you had this microphone turned up so loud right now that not only will it inevitably cause my voice to be doing that weird clicking thing, which it shouldn't, because as you could see from this microphone, and I'm going to use my NOAA radio here.
Normal lows range from the low 30s over the Alleghenies to the upper 30s across the lower Susquehanna Valley.
Yeah, we're experiencing some cold weather right now. But the purpose I wanted to show you here is I use a light to make this effect. Not only do I have the classic flat pop screen, but you can see the microphone behind there. There's another pop screen on that. And in the background, you're hearing a cat in a litter box. This, by the way, if you've never seen this show before, also has a solar panel on the top. So it's a self-charging weather radio, AM, FM radio flashlight with a crank on the back, which also has an emergency thing on the back of it. So you could, let's see if you can get my finger out of the way. It's important to know these things. See, there's two USB ports, a small and a large. So you can use it as an emergency cell phone charger. And beyond that, in the back is a solar, where my book would be on the left. On the right here is a something you can actually plug things into. How bright this thing is. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff we have on Great Solar Stuff. And suddenly this turned into a commercial, but it's not. But some of the top, this will help open your mind. Tony Caravan's Codex. All right, let's get back to business. I hope there's not a big clicking going on here. I hear all these other people, I've been in broadcasting for years, and the sound I'm getting in my headphones, and when I do these quick tests in the morning, it sounds great, but then I watch it back on YouTube, and there must be something in the process they do. And whether it's intentional, and I'm being paranoid, I don't know. I'm drinking iced coffee today, medium roast. And my chair just slid down like it normally does.
Let's get this show on the road.
Okay, enough of that nonsense. So, yeah, in a more serious, if you look at the last three to four videos, they've dealt with somewhat serious subjects. And I don't know if you heard that, but the road rally is in full force today. It's a Tuesday. 6:16 a.m. on March the 30th. The last next to the last day of the month. And here in the former United States, mid-Atlantic states where I'm situated, Eastern Standard Time, by the way, 6:17, it's 39 degrees outside. And it's looking like I'm going to be okay for the next couple days for those who are nearby. But Wednesday and Thursday nights and Friday night are all going to be below freezing. In fact, below freezing on the latter two nights, we're talking about in the 20s. I've got potatoes and carrots in the ground. I'm not worried about those. And I've got them covered with burlap. I put some radishes in and I covered them with burlap, and I also have them covered with a glass pane, which should help prevent any frost damage. But there are one or two herbs out there that are kind of cold resistant. But once you get down to 20, that's just a little too much. So all you can hope as a gardener is that the daytime, you have a sunny day when it's going to dip down that much into the 20s. And so that the black dirt will absorb enough heat that the soil might stay close to 40-ish, even though, and as long as you cover the top of those things so that you can't get the level of frost damage on the leaf or stem or whatever, that you'll make it through. The roots are protected and you're not going to get that, frozen leaf. But it's a roll of the dice. It's a very important thing these days for people like me and for the average person is to have the ability to grow your own food. I think it's very important. I think we'll be witnessing food shortages in the coming 6 to 18 months and beyond. It'll only get worse. As this planet cools, we are entering into this grand solar minimum. Our magnetic field is weakening, increased volcanic activity, putting more ash in the sky, cooling the planet further. And all of this is cyclical. And the potential for a solar outburst that could cause a grid down situation or other problems along those lines is looking more and more probable. Okay. And that's why I say it's surreal. Because I've talked about over the past couple weeks, and particularly the past several days, this idea of how I've broken away from what one would call mainstream media, cable, cut the cord, whatever you want to call it. And so I removed myself from that day-to-day, bombardment of lies by used car salesmen. Content, fear-mongering, hype, eye candy, clickbait, whatever you want to call it. And so when you accidentally happen upon someone's post, or you see a statement, or a headline in passing when you don't really you're not interested in it, but it just happened to be there when you're looking for something else, or when you turn on something or open, a particular app, so to speak. And you see people saying things that are so off the wall. And actually, in this particular instance I'm talking about, a person was pleading with people about something that I don't want to mention because it's in our society today on these media platforms are unmentionable and will basically get you erased. It's the unspeakable. So in effect, it's becoming the unknowable for many people. And when you do discuss these things with someone maybe you haven't seen in a while or a stranger you encounter, it truly is. You realize it's the unknowable because it is unspeakable. They have no idea and they don't see the absurdity of what's going on. I mean, we're some 2 years into a bizarre plague, so to speak, that, you know, and you can't, that was they did a dry run and had an event 201 about, 2 months or a month before it hit. I watched a show. I don't, I'm a comic book hero type of, when I want to relax my mind, my escapism, my go-to source for escapism is like Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and some of the better productions that have been made, some of the series that have come out, by that. I like that. I've always liked science fiction and, particularly under Stan Lee's former helmsmanship, Marvel Comics. But, I've basically gone through everything now. That's the thing. If you're not a news junkie, if you don't watch TV, mindlessness on TV, then, you subscribe to a pay service every now and then. And so you watch or binge watch some kind of series. But, after so many months, even if you're not obsessive about it, if you just watch several, you might watch several in a row. It's a new phenomenon in our culture now. Binge watching. We all do it. I mean, I have to openly admit, there are times when I've gone too far. When at first I realized, that I'm going like, wait a second, it's midnight. I've been watching this. This is about the 6th episode. So now I try to limit myself, to maybe 2 or 3. But I'll be honest with you, occasionally I'll watch the 4th. So I've been watching I think I think I've seen everything now. That's hard to say, that's a big statement. But over a couple years, you know, and if you're not watching the nightly news, if you're not watching some sitcom, right? We all have that moment, those moments, those evening moments. I get up early. Like I say, I started broadcasting this I started setting up before 6 a.m. I woke up at 5 by the time I get everything together. So it's a long day, Yesterday, for example, to give you an example, I think I woke up at 4 a.m. I did my show in 2 parts. After my show, I went for a walk, like a mile and a half round trip down to a grocery store, procured some, supplies. It was garbage day, so I went about the house and back in the garage and gathered up my trash to put out for the garbage man. Took care of the cat. I feed some birds, checked on the various plants and things of that sort. Had some breakfast. All of these things. And it wasn't even 10 o'clock in the morning by the time I had done all that stuff. So, my days are long, you know, and, normally if it were late spring, summer, at that point, I'd go out in the yard, do a little gardening, and get on the lounge chair, put on some music, and catch that late morning, just pre-noon sun and work on my vitamin D intake suntan, enjoying some good music, and then come in the house, take a shower, do some laundry, and still it would only be like 1 o'clock or 1:30. So the days go on, right? Do a project for someone, talk to somebody, family member. So no matter how you look at it, there's time. Well, this show's about time. And so I've been watching the last DC, a program based on a DC comic called Black Lightning. I don't know if anyone's seen that. And it's, I always had a weakness, and I've always enjoyed classic R&B music. And, kudos to whoever, has been selecting some of the songs that they throw in the background of that. It's very authentic, and I've lived in all the major cities. So I know, I understand, as a so-called white guy, I guess, I understand Black culture, and I've always had an appreciation for it. I think I've talked before, everything from wearing a dashiki, but the thing about, to me, apart from being a jazz and a blues fan, what we would call today classic R&B music, like what you see is what you get, that type of thing. Some of that 70s stuff. That was all post-civil rights movement, when everything, was possible. Something that people today just have no idea, which is another, absurdity, that these young people don't know that we already went through this thing. These people are just copying something that was already accomplished. But the show's heavy in Black culture, in that regard. The show's basically targeted for Black people. And that's not to say, and that shouldn't be taken as a negative statement. It would be no different than watching. I mean, it's so targeted, and I'm talking as somebody who's produced things, who's written scripts and stuff. This is no different than something that you would see, as similarly as if you were creating a sitcom on Spanish speaking TV. Do you understand what I'm saying? This thing is culturally authentic, but is so good, and so true, that unless you have been immersed in that culture firsthand, the average person would go, this is too much, or they'd be lost. It's a good show in that regard. And I enjoy it. But I'm just about at the end of running out of episodes on, I guess, Netflix right now. And it's such a long story, I forgot what the point was. What was I talking about? Sorry for that. Iced coffee. But in all seriousness, what I mean is that I find myself I have time to binge watch, is what I'm saying. And I've kind of reached almost the last. I'm just hoping that I could find something else. I'm at my last DC comic book, hero, so to speak, defender of the people series. And I recommend Black Lightning to somebody who's who's enjoyed other comics. I say this is more of a DC thing, but I'll tell you, I liked Marvel a little more because they seem to be a little more dark, whereas DC has always been more into the human side of things. Like the Flash is DC, and this isn't about comic books, so stick with me. I just want to get through this tangent. My shows are always like this. Like, I've watched The Flash, and that show's still on, but I've binge watched like previous shows, leading up to it. But, like the kid who plays the Flash, he's kind of a wimpy guy and disappoints. And DC, in other words, they're very idealistic in a sense of, if you take a character like Luke Cage or Jessica Jones, they're going to knock somebody's, brains out, right? You know what I mean? That's they're the classic superhero. They don't hold back, But DC tends the comic book characters they're heroes, comic book heroes. They always have this idea of this, while they're vigilante in the sense, in one sense, they're not, they don't go that, they don't give you that extra thing. Like for an example, another Marvel, character that really brings to light what I'm trying to say is the Punisher. Okay. Watch the Punisher, particularly even season 2, if you can still get that on Netflix or wherever. I think it was on Netflix. There's no holding back. The Punisher, just the name, but there's no holding back there. Well, the DC doesn't have, their characters are not like the Punisher, right? And if they do, then it's like, then there's a whole show is spent on, on regret and moralizing about somebody went too far or something like that. The Punisher punishes and doesn't look back. What does that have to do with anything? Well, it's an example in our current society of another division that we have among, these irreconcilable differences I talk about in the former United States, and that Western civilization is long gone. It's not coming back. The U.S. isn't coming back. This Davos set, they've succeeded. I'm not going to replay the cow, but we're cattle on their tax farm and consumer farm for so long that people have basically just come to, accept it. It's like the thing with the baby elephant. In the old circus days, I don't even think they have circuses anymore. They would take a baby elephant, and they would tie a rope around its leg, just a little rope around its leg, and hammer a stake into the ground. And the baby elephant's only, several feet tall, weighs maybe weighs a little more than a bull, cow. But, it's a substantial stake and it's a thick rope. So when the elephant pulls on the rope to get away, it's kind of like a dog on a leash. It realizes its limitations. It can't. And so it tries and tries. And eventually it realizes that that rope and that stake and the boundary, the length of that rope is as far as that baby elephant can go until, the elephant trainer, whomever it is, comes along and sets the elephant free of the rope. Well, the elephant grows and the elephant becomes gigantic, is now measured in tonnage. But at the circus, when they put the elephant there before waiting for it to come out and do its silly trick, which I'm against, by the way, that sort of thing. I don't appreciate capturing animals, in that way. But it's a telling tale. They put the rope on the leg, around the neck, or I believe it's a leg, one of the rear legs, and put the stake and hammer the stake in the ground. Now there's this giant elephant, all right, that could basically probably push over a house if it wanted to. Will not go beyond the length of that rope because its memory is that it has tried when it was a baby elephant and that it was futile. It's a true story. And as far as I know, I've never heard of any stories of the elephant actually, rampaging the crowd in the circus, pulling away from that rope and stake that it could easily just pull out. And so, that's how they train animals that way, but they also train people that way. And that's the part that we don't see. We don't see how we're being trained. We don't understand that we're cattle on a tax farm, on a consumer farm. We don't understand the mind games they've been playing with us. We don't understand the indoctrination of children in a school system that has more administrators than teachers. And like I've talked about before, in days gone by where you had a principal, a vice principal, and a janitor and a couple of office workers, that was it. Now you have a detached administration building. What are these people doing? Oh, they're going over curriculum. They're psychologists. They've got PhDs in education, human behavior, early childhood development, blah, 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 blah. And yet the greatest generation, so to speak, and all the people responsible for the society that brought forth everything from landing a man on the moon to the computer I'm talking through, the computer technology, to the apps that these critics and these administrators use, their laptops, their tablets, their cell phones they can't live without, all were created by people that were brought up in an environment where they didn't have any of those administrators. They just had a principal, a vice principal, like I say, a couple of office ladies, at least at the school I went to. And that was it. And there was a janitor, smiley, happy-faced janitor. The gym teacher was usually the football coach. was like America. And out of that, you have all of this, modern cities, transportation, jet airplanes. And like I say, people's favorite thing of all, the smartphone, which I find repugnant. And I think has been led to the downfall of civilization. So what good are these administrators and what are they doing entering the picture after we've already seemed to have done quite good without them? Well, the purpose is to tear it all down, take control of it, manipulate it. And that's what they do. It's the same with the media. It's manipulation. It's propaganda. I mean, call it what you will. It's brainwashing. So I read this post by this person that was fearful of children getting this plague, so to speak, and trying to plead with people who would read this post that this is real, this is bad, this is horrible, these people are really sick, these kids. And I don't disagree that that individual encountered sick children. I mean, after all, it's 39 degrees outside. It's been a very cold winter. And despite what you see on the media, we've had some of the coldest weather in years. We've broken 30-year records of cold over the past decades, right? Planet has been cooling. It's not getting hotter. These kids have the flu. Yeah, they're sick. I was talking to somebody not so long ago. I was talking about there's a thing when I was younger. They say the kids used to get this cough and they used to call it like the croup. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And it was just like, like real thing. You could almost, if you lived in a neighborhood, even though you're separate houses, you could hear it in the next house over or something. I could remember being younger, getting the flu and being down for the count for 2 weeks where you couldn't get out of bed. And like I talked about before, I was always raised in a family where, of course, you washed your hands. And if you were sick, you stayed home from school. And you covered your mouth if you coughed. And you used a handkerchief or a napkin if you felt a sneeze coming on, or tissue. You felt the sneeze coming on. And you blew your nose. You bathed regularly. You wore clean clothes. Your mother or whomever cleaned, disinfected the house, especially during flu season, cold season. And here was this person posting this thing, which I accidentally read because it was an accident, because I was looking to delete some things because I was making sure I try to make sure that, I post my videos on various social media, but I don't want, sometimes things get posted in your feed, so to speak. And I'm such a non-user of social media that I don't go into all of, people tell me, oh, there's all kinds of things you could go into, preferences, and turn off this so that you don't get that, or you do this. And it's like, look, I'm not into it. Here's what social media is for me right now. When this video is over, I'm going to hit the share button. Okay. And I will share it on Twitter. I'll share it on Facebook. I'll share it on maybe LinkedIn. and then I'll copy the URL, and then I'll manually share that on a few other sites that YouTube doesn't necessarily give you that one button share thing with. And that's how I get my word out beyond this live, webcast, TV, and they're the way they restrict me here. And so I reach more people that way, thousands of people. But every now and then I just want to make sure that there's not something in that feed, and that's what I was doing, that is, counter to my, my belief system, really, because there's some crazy stuff out there. And sometimes these things are like advertisements, or they're pushed. That's like a word. It's a technical word, they call it push advertising. They're pushed onto people's feeds, and you have to literally go and remove them. I don't want this type of thing here, right? And so I saw this person pleading with people. And I was thinking, how lost are you? How entirely lost are you? And this wasn't a young person. You don't recall being sick as a dog, as we call it. Or how about words like this? Suddenly it just hit me like a ton of bricks, right? I could remember calling I was having some heart flutter issues about 10 years ago, which turns out to be was like a vitamin deficiency, or I wasn't getting enough. I wasn't getting enough salt, I think, in my diet, and hydration, right? Which because I was trying to, my idea was to avoid salt. And I guess I just wasn't drinking enough water or whatever. Anyway, that was the background on it. I went to an electrocardiologist and that whole 9 yards. And so at that time, if I felt fatigued or sick, I was concerned, because I didn't know it wasn't until a year or two later that I realized, that issue was addressed, and it wasn't, well, at least, like I say, knock on wood, at least it was presented to me that it wasn't as serious as it could have been, after having stress tests and going through all that stuff. It was like, they kind of isolated it as, basically you're dehydrated and you need more electrolytes and things of that nature. But I could recall, this is like 10 years ago, pre this thing, the plague, so-called. And waking up and just feeling really bad. Like my head weighed a ton. It was hard to get my head off the pillow, But I didn't have a runny nose or anything like that, And so I was thinking, oh no, well, maybe, because I had this scare with the heart thing. Well, maybe I'm having a heart attack, or maybe it's so I call the heart doctor in his office, her office. And I get like the head nurse, very efficient, very, professional operation, these are, high-end medical professionals. I'm fortunate that in the area I live that they have, these types of professionals to that degree. So I'm talking to this nurse, I wanted to talk to the doctor. I said, maybe I should come in. I just feel. And I went through she went through my symptoms and all this stuff. And she said, you had the flu. I said, but my nose isn't running or anything like that. She said, it doesn't matter. You don't always get a runny nose when you get the flu. Yeah, but I don't really have a sore throat or anything like that. Yeah, well, you don't necessarily get a sore throat. And she went through it one by one. She said, look, go back to bed, drink plenty of liquids, take a couple of aspirin. And if it gets worse, or if you get other symptoms, if you get chest pains, or if you feel, blah, 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 whatever she said at the time, she said, then call us or come, or go to the emergency room. But in the absence of that, she says, you have the flu. So I basically just kind of bundled up, did what she said, sat around, probably watched some movies. But I felt bad for like well over a week or so. And I could remember in days gone by that. And I've talked to other people about that. But suddenly now, if you get the flu, it's the plague. Everything's the plague. So that was very alarming to me. And that's, and that's why I say it was surreal. The way people are acting right now. And I'm not going to get into a discussion about this. And I hope nobody responds to this and comments on it, because I'm not going to comment back. I'm not argue. I'm not into this from a political, ideological, standpoint. All the science is out there. Let the doctors and the scientists and the virologist argue those points. I'm not neither of those things. The best I can do, the best we can do, is remember time, the passage of time, and all the times we've been sick from childhood to adulthood. And how terms like, man, I was deathly ill, or he was deathly ill, but they didn't die, and they weren't really deathly ill. They were just terms. Like I said, hit me like a ton of bricks. I was down for the count. I felt as if I was dying. Couldn't get out of bed. And then I could just keep hearing that nurse or those other doctors saying, you have the flu. Take 2 aspirins, drink plenty of liquids. Give him some chicken soup. And that's the way it is. Now, it's not for everybody, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, how to do, and what's what. And this person that doesn't have something or does have something, if you're ill, do what I did. Call your medical professional, call your doctor's office, right? If you feel as if you're dying, go to the emergency room. That's what I did. Like I said, I called the doctor. And I suggest you do the same. Don't go scaring people. Don't go passing some ideology out there. Don't get caught up in some sort of turn the world into more of a surrealistic nightmare than it already is. Because what's going on right now, this is a surrealistic nightmare we're living through. And to see a comment like that, which is commonplace, by the way, is just, just takes you so aback that it's like, my God, what have they done to the mind of that person? And how could they have erased every time they ever caught a cold? or a flu, or saw a kid with a flu. Kids always get colds. Kids get really bad colds. You know, I remember growing up. You know, you get fevers. The parents would to lower. You never went. They'd give you alcohol baths to get your fever down or something. I mean, it was crazy. And then all sorts of home remedies and stuff. You didn't go to the doctor or the hospital unless you were like gushing blood or something, you know? But you were smart enough that you washed your hands and you covered your mouth when you coughed and you blew your nose. You didn't sneeze on somebody, right? And your parents did the laundry, disinfect, kept the house clean. And we always had a can of Lysol around my house growing up, you know? And so, are we experiencing something that just means, like I said in an earlier version where I was talking about so many air fresheners and so few disinfectants? Were people masking germs for so long and just being, are there so many just dirty people, unclean, I guess is a better word. Is that what it is? Is that what's going on here? Like the people who don't, when I was a kid, it was like, they dressed, when it was cold, they dressed you up, bundled you up, and you hated it. But, your mom or dad, they made you put this hat on and this heavier coat. And then you'd see those other kids, like I talked about yesterday, the ones who started smoking when they were 13 or 14, and they'd be outside in the winter with like a t-shirt on and no hat. And they're smoking and coughing. And most of those people are probably dead now. Right? So, common sense. But that's just one aspect of of the surrealism that's going on right now. Well, let's move along. As time passes here in the background. Politics is pop culture, the cult of personality. Accidentally coming upon that. The reason I canceled my TV service, as I said in the past several shows. The news junkies caught up in that world. The things that are coming out of the mouths of politicians and news readers, various pundits. They're insane. It's pure insanity. And people are falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. Lost. Totally, entirely lost. That buzz said it's garbage day, but I already took my garbage out. Dismiss. And now they're talking about passes. In other words, you can't go through society without having some kind of pass to prove that you're, this is like the caste system in India. Oh my God, if you don't have this thing, you're unclean. You can't participate in society. Right? I mean, that's what they're saying, really. You're unclean. You can't go here. You can't do this. You need this pass. That's what they're working on right now. This is, the idea of the powers that be. They found a new thing, the fear of the boogeyman. The new boogeyman is the invisible boogeyman. People used to be afraid of terrorism, right? But once they killed, that's why they waited so long too, by the way. That's my take on that. They waited so long to, off that guy because they wanted to milk it and build and profit. And unfortunately, thousands of our patriot soldiers died were terribly, horribly injured while they built up this military industrial complex under the guise of the fear of that bogeyman, some skinny, weak, bearded imbecile that they could have taken out any time they want to. Yeah, I know the technology. I know. I told a story once how I tracked down some hackers in the Ukraine right to their building and scared the crap out of them and made them who's tried to steal money out of my account. And I basically got to them and I said, I see you. Transfer the money now or else. And I did that as a layperson. Okay. Not as an operative for the company. They knew where that guy was. Could have taken him out anytime they wanted to. But once that happened, they needed a new bogeyman. Something to fear people, right? Something like this.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So they could send in the choppers. Okay? And unfortunately, we, the cattle, on their tax consumer and, I don't know, circus farm, I guess. You know, it's a fun house in the horror house. Let's add that to it. It's turned it into a, you know, we got rid of the circus, talked about the circus elephant, but now it's the House of Horrors, right? The former United States, the House / the House of Horrors, right? You know, I don't know, a show a week or two ago, I had, you know, that classic painting, the scream up on this, you know, on my screen, scream on the screen, you know, and this idea of fear, House of Horrors, be afraid to go out of your house, right? Turn in anyone. It's like, you know, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Not wearing a mask. You're not social distancing. And then you've got these people that believe in this cult of personality and that some political candidate's going to come and be their messiah and change all these things that have been permanently changed. It's permanently changed. It's irreconcilable differences, right? The left and the right, the Republicans, the Democrats, the red state, blue states, they're not getting back together. All right? It's done. The SJWs aren't going to be, you know, singing Kumbaya with, you know, the normal people. It's just the way it is. That's the reality of reality. The passage of time, look how fast. You know, our lives are like a wink of the eye. And we waste it in servitude to these people that just want to fearmonger us, scare us. You know, there are actually like 3 or 4 cures out there for this so-called plague. You never hear anybody talk about that. You know, literally cure it. Yeah. No. We need to get a pass, social credit score, you know? That's what we need. The government needs to have complete and total control of our lives. Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't mean to be so somber about this whole thing, but, it's getting crazier and crazier. And meanwhile, like I say, in a couple of, another month or so, this is what these NPCs, non-player characters, these people who are frightened to death will be doing. They'll be out mowing their lawns on their sit-down mowers that cost a couple $1,000s, like their washer and dryers that cost several $1,000s, their refrigerators that cost several $1,000s, right? Their cars that cost tens of thousands of dollars, right? Overpriced insurance, overpriced cars. Yeah, but my car has heated seats and it's got Wi-Fi in it. I mean, yeah, I got to buy a new one every 5 years or so because, the circuitry is all computerized. And once that goes, man, you can't get under the hood. It's actually comical sometimes to watch some of these guys who still try to change their own oil or open up the hood and try to do some work on their car, but there's so little they can really do. I remember my cars over the years. I used to carry I had like a toolbox. It was actually just a box mainly in the back of my trunk that had extra everything in it, all the things that could go wrong practically. And I was able to change and fix barring the transmission dropping, that was your biggest fear if you had an older car, is that you'd have a transmission problem. But practically everything else, you could either get underneath, the hood or underneath the car. And with a series of wrenches and various other things, you could fix it. I've taken dashboards off, replaced things, done all that, put in radios. I actually put in toggle switches, for extra lights and drilled holes in my, the older cars I had, I didn't care. It's like my house. With the beauty of owning a house is that if you want to put a hole through a wall to do something or drill through a floor to, get a wire upstairs, speaker wire or some kind of thing, you just do it. And that was the nice thing about an old cars. Well, at least from my perspective. You wanted to add something to your dashboard, you just drilled on it. It was old, you didn't care, weren't worried about the trade-in value. You just put an ad in the paper and sell it. And half the time you'd sell the car, you'd just sell it for a few $100s, right? The absurdity of life in the 21st century, the year 2021. People are scared of germs. We have a totalitarian, authoritarian governors are running states as if they're, fiefdoms. The difference between people is like night and day. And then there's that group, like I said before, touched on yesterday and the day before. The majority of people who aren't even paying attention to half this stuff, right? Television ratings are so low. The average gamer doesn't really is sitting there with a bottle of Mountain Dew or whatever energy drink or caffeinated beverage of choice they have, and has a headset on and is playing some game through some various box series of brands of boxes connected to the internet, and that's what they're spending their lockdown time doing. It's a big industry. There's a lot of people doing that. Millions and millions and millions of people. That's what they're doing. It's amazing the things that people really do that the news readers and used car salesmen on television and the politicians don't tell you about or are clueless about. And all sorts of interests people have. Human beings are still very creative people. And there are people out there just creating stuff. You see these Etsy's and ideas on these various websites. The whole series of arts and crafts, continues and is in full bloom in society. Those people, for the most part, they're in, their peace of mind comes in getting caught up in the zen of of whatever the creative process is that they're involved in. And then there's people like me, that just I do lots of different things, but when I get caught up in the gardening and the outdoors for say 7 months of the year or more, it seems that I'm trying to add more and more months to doing that because I get satisfaction out of it, and it's my disconnect from society because I also get food, good food. And when I'm doing that, I'm not thinking about anything. That's why I got rid of the TV service, cut the cord. And there's millions and millions and millions of people doing that. Yeah. But this idea that they've locked people down, that these authoritarians have decided that they don't want us to exercise our freedom, even in our own private spaces. In other words, they have to be the father protector of the citizenry. And under the guise of that, it's the idea that if you don't do this, you're putting someone else at risk. Right? How are you putting someone else at risk if you're all alone in a park by yourself with no one within, 100 feet of you or more? People have been arrested for being outdoors 100 feet away from any other person. Who are they putting at risk? We've locked up our elderly in nursing homes, in other words, in care facilities and apartment buildings. People can't see their dying relatives anymore. So the last moments of life for many people are spent completely alone, unable to say goodbye to their loved ones or have their loved ones comfort them. And we have the elderly in cages, basically. If they had a lot of money, they have a gilded cage. If there's someone who didn't have a particular awful lot of money, they're just in a cage basically. I mean, it's not bars, it's a door, but it's a cage. Because, they might get the plague or spread the plague. We've already gone beyond the time frame of some of the worst so-called real plagues that have existed before. And this thing, they're planning to just keep this thing rolling. They found the perfect boogeyman. Imagine that. And people don't look at this and they don't think it's like surreal. Right? Meanwhile, there's a beautiful world out there. This is the world we live in. This is the former United States of America, right? It's now become a horror show in the cities, but this is the beautiful country, the beautiful geography that we have. You know, a lot of people, blood, sweat, and tears to build this nation. Yeah. And that includes the indigenous people as well. They're being tormented as much as as the average descendants of descendants of descendants of colonialists. Because at this point, that's another thing that cracks me up. With this idea is when history can be used conveniently to support some sort of authoritarian, totalitarian, control mechanism, then suddenly it's quoted. But when the history of civilization, the celebration of people and cultures, that's, that we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about the good things, the things that have made life better, right? Now, you can only talk about the the worst, of the worst. Can't talk about the best of the best. There's more good people than there are bad people. It's like when they have these rampages, we've recently seen a few of these events, so to speak, happen. And they're all over the news, and politicians, everybody jumps on this and basically elevates some psychopath, a criminally insane person, to some sort of hero status, because that's what it is. Because other psychopaths, that's how they view that. It gives them ideas and they become copycats and things like that. Those people don't deserve the time of day. There should be no coverage whatsoever of it, except in that local instance. By publicizing and plastering someone's face, people have no idea of the concept of how that, how the criminally insane, that's a motivator to them. These people don't deserve publicity. They don't deserve to become a household name. And besides, as I always say, in a country of 332 million people, when you have one person here or one person there that goes on some rampage or snaps, that's a statistical anomaly. All right? That's going to happen no matter what you do. And people say, oh, that person was influenced by such and such, and this, if we do this, this will help end that. And I always say, well, there's 332 million other people that, you know, didn't act out, didn't do that thing, and they were exposed to all, lived in the same society with those same things and were exposed to the same, you know, speeches, you know, television shows, video games, or whatever the latest one is. Remember when the video games were causing all the crime? Until the video game industry decided to lobby Congress so much, then that got pushed aside. The corporatocracy, the string pullers, everything in this country happens because there's these people in the corporatocracy pulling strings. They're donating to political campaigns. They're writing the bills that end up in Congress. They're writing those stacks of executive orders. You see, that's who runs the world. Davos. They meet in Davos, the World Economic Forum. What do you think the Great Reset is? Agenda 2030. What do you think these things are? Fantasy? They're not fantasy. Just go on the internet to their actual .org websites. They tell you they're not afraid to admit it. It's public. They tell you exactly what they're planning to do and what they do. They have no shame. Hell, you can see videos from Event 201, that was planning all of the things they would do. The reason I was talking about Black Lightning before is I had forgotten. Was that there was a scene in there because those episodes were prior to this plague. And in that show, they had these meta-humans. If you're not a meta-human, basically means you have some superpower. For those who aren't into the comic, hero world. But they locked up this city where it was under like martial law, so to speak. And they were containing everything. And the excuse they gave was that for the outside world, why no one was allowed in or out of this city, was that there was a SARS outbreak. I don't know if you know, but basically I had a test and I should have brought it over. I wasn't thinking I was going to talk about it. I have it on my bulletin board for people who come into my house. I tested negative. But basically what it says at the top of it says SARS-CoV-2. That's what this is, SARS. Which has been around since 2002, by the way. And if you look on the back of a Lysol, if you find an old Lysol spray can or a Clorox wipe package from several years ago before this thing, look on the back of it. It says, kills human coronavirus. People don't know anything about that. Well, they say, oh, but the people who do know, they say, yeah, but it's novel. It's a novel one. In the UK, reports came out that no one had died of the flu this year. 0 cases of the flu. But people died of the plague. Interesting. Well, I didn't really want to get onto a rant that way. I wanted more to talk about space-time. Salvador Dali, clocks, surrealism, But it is. I mean, it's so surreal. And as overused as that word is, and absurdity is. And I mean, every time the words that you criticize society with today, it's just, you sound like a broken record for those who still remember what a record was. But it's like, it's so disheartening to see this. And I do these things because, not because I'm against protesting. I'm not trying to change a person's mind. You see, I'm against that. I believe protest and, rioting and all that stuff that are exercises in futility. I'm against that. I believe in the individual liberty of the person. In other words, freedom. That we all have a right to be free, as long as we don't infringe upon the freedom of another individual. That kind of thing. The kind of live and let live, so to speak. I mean, that's how I go through life. I don't force my ideology on anyone, and I don't want someone forcing their ideology on me. That's why I no longer like politics. There was a time when I basically was out there writing. I've written 10 books. I point over here because I have a stack of them, like right there. And I brought those out from time to time. But like I said, even myself, I've changed. Having an open mind, I've changed my mind over the years. As you encounter more and more factual data, you realize, you see the truth and the beauty of nature. Truth and beauty. We talked about that yesterday. And so what I'm trying to do with these, vlogs, podcast, whatever you want to call it, I'm just sharing my insights into things. I don't want to change anybody's mind. That person that wrote that was like so, scared and fearful and somehow forgotten that people catch colds and get the flu. I feel sorry for them. I don't say these things because I want to see change. Maybe that's selfish in one way. See, I live an ideal life. I'm not wealthy by any means. I've got a leaky roof. I still don't know what I'm going to do about that. Once we get into the real rainy seasons, I've been trying to patch my roof from the inside because I can't get up there. It's 4 stories up, and I can't find anyone other than a major contractor that wants to charge like $12,000 to put on a metal roof or some kind of a new roof. Maybe even more now. The prices, we're dealing with like hyperinflation, right now. People aren't noticing it, but everything's just inching up. And I don't see any and the media or anyone like that coming to our defense on that. But taking advantage of all this free money that they're throwing out, so the corporatocracy, which rules, remember, the corporatocracy is the government now. The elected officials they're marionettes. Some of them are great orators and say all kinds of interesting things, but they're powerless people. They only do what they're told to do by the corporatocracy. When they meet in Davos every year, that's where the decisions are made on what's going to happen. But we're watching the prices of everything go up and up and up. So yeah, I don't have, I basically live a very simplistic life, but I have everything I need. You see, I've got the ability to do this. I have the backyard garden. I have my music collection. I've got my guitars. You know, I've got the big screen TV. You know, what else is there? You know, when you're not caught up in, you know, in this idea of where I need a bright and shiny object to every day, you know, what do you really need? So it's not like I'm presenting these things in some way, shape, or form so that because I feel, oh, I want it. You know, I didn't even care. The lockdown, I've said this before, you know, quite frankly, for me, this whole thing has been profitable in a sense that last year they gave us $1,200. Towards the end of the year, we got $600, and then we got $1,400, you know, just a couple weeks ago. So that's $3,200 cash, like tax-free $3,200. So in my book is I was given 30. So I profited, you know, I looked at this and said, okay, if you people want to give me $3,200, fine. You know, and I walked down the street and I put on a handkerchief over my face to go to the grocery store. And you accept that as if that's a mask. Even in my doctor's office, I just put a handkerchief on. And he seems to think that was fine. I mean, I have a box of someone gave me some N95 masks or whatever they are. I tried wearing those. I couldn't even breathe through them. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. But I can breathe through the handkerchiefs, which means it's serving no purpose whatsoever. My doctor seemed to think it was okay. So yeah, I don't mind walking into the grocery store like Jesse James, a bank robber, you know, putting the handkerchief up over and grabbing my groceries and then walking home. I don't wear it when I walk down the street. There's nobody, you know, nobody else does where I am. And they gave me $3,200 on top of it. Then there's these unemployed people who got basically made as much money over the past year as they did when they had a job. Some less, but some more. So when I talk about this stuff, it's not like I'm out here thinking, oh, we must change, you know, where I got a magic marker on a cardboard sign with a stick, you know, and I'm out there protesting, right? No, I'm against that stuff. You know, if you guys want to act like idiots, you want to, you know, get in lockstep to these authoritarians. You want to believe in the bogeyman. You want to be afraid of germs. If you think the government's got to tell you to wash your hands, you can't. You grew up in a house where you didn't understand hygiene, basic hygiene yourself, right? Well, that's your problem. And my purpose of today's, you know, whatever you want to call it, sermon. I feel like the last couple of days they've been more sermons than vlogs. It's not intentional. It's just the way it is. You know, we'll get back to having some, you know, fun at some point like this.
Hello. 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 Hello.
I mean, life is to enjoy after all. It's a beautiful world. People are beautiful. All things will pass, you know? But yeah, it's, you know, I don't understand, you know, the purpose of this was just the surreal aspect of it all. And I think I got a little too heavy there for about 45 minutes. And I apologize for that. You know, for those who made it this far, who didn't like instantly go to some kind of comment thing. Oh, this guy is crazy. You know, I didn't learn. It's like a cognitive dissonance and, you know, and setting people off. You know, I've been criticized, you know, and when I see something like that, well, I'll just delete it. So if that's your thing, I'm just going to delete it. It doesn't bother me. Like I said, you know, I benefited from the lockdown to the tune of $3,200. You know, so, and I'm at a point in my life, and I don't have to pay taxes on that money. I'm retired. I'm retired now. Got everything I need. The morning show is my new thing. I don't make money on this, by the way, in case somebody just tuned in. I'm not monetized like those YouTubers that are all, you know, make a living at this thing. I don't make a living at it. I don't make anything at it. I lose money on it, actually, technically. My internet service, as far as I'm concerned, is overpriced. And like I said, just a couple shows ago, I ended up buying a graphic. I bought a stock photo because I wanted to show the farmer leaving the farm, because I constantly talk about this, that we're cattle on a tax farm. And I had posed the question a couple of videos ago. You might want to watch that one. What happens when the farmer leaves the farm? Meaning, if we're cattle on a tax consumer farm, what happens when the Bezoses, you know, and the Davos set decide, we've got enough money, we've milked enough, we've got so many trillions of dollars out of these suckers that we don't need them anymore. You know, it's like in these sci-fi or these dystopian thrillers you see. You know, what happens when the guards leave the prison, right? And the prisoners are still locked in their cages. You know, so what happens when the farmer leaves the cattle in the field? You know, people don't think about that. You know, it's the same thing when there's like a natural disaster. Like, you know, in a grid down situation, people have this idea, you know, people who are afraid of the so-called police state. You ever hear that? Oh, it's a police state. Yeah, it's a police state, kinda. But here's what happens when things, you know, when the fit hits the shan. Most of the police have family. And they pretty much, and it's same with soldiers. And while some will, you know, stand the line and just follow that chain of command for a while, ultimately, when things get completely out of control, they're back protecting their family. You know, they've got babies, they've got wives, husbands, you know, mothers, fathers, whatever, sisters, brothers. And so people don't even think about that. You know, they're not going to go out. They're not to go out there and, you know, keep order when total disorder is the way of the land. And that's when all these Davos set, what I call the corporatocracy, the puppeteers, and that's what's going on right now. That's when they all just escape, because they know that. You know, they might have their private little security forces, which they do. But, you know, again, in a country even the size of the United States, we have 332 million people. CNN and Fox combined don't even reach something like 1/3 of 1%, right? Or 2/3 of 1%. In other words, 99 point something percent of Americans don't watch either Fox or CNN, and I put them up as an example of like the polarity of ideology, right? Another weird thing is that 99%, I should say, of Americans didn't die from the plague and won't when it's all said and done. Over 99%, 99+% did not die from it and won't. Think about that. But they present numbers. Figures lie and liars figure. They use percentages when it works to their benefit of fear tactics, and they use numbers when they scare people. And they say, oh, over 500,000 people. Yeah, over 500,000 people died of cancer. Over 600,000 died of cancer last year and every year. All right. I'm a cancer survivor, knock on wood. Over 500,000 people die every year of heart disease. I had some heart problems, knock on wood. That's every year, not just like, a novel flu. But people are like, I'm afraid of everything. Afraid to go out of my house. Well, I think it would be a lot better use of our resources of our government taxpayer-funded agencies like CDC and the FDA, and the National Institute for Health, and even the World Health Organization that's now getting its funding back from the U.S. Why aren't they focusing on the fact on the major killers that kill people every year, right? In bigger numbers. This thing is a passing fancy. I hate to say it. People have been dying from these things since the beginning of time. But but the numbers don't add up and even come close to comparing it to heart disease, cancer, and so many other diseases. Some kind of truck outside my house. I don't know what's going on out there. I think they're digging the sewer up. Millions of people die in the U.S. every year from various health issues, all of which, if they were focused on, those death numbers could be cut drastically. But the reason we don't focus on those things is because there are too many people making profit on them. There's certain weed killers out there that have been proven to cause cancer, okay? And you can turn on a TV and watch an ad from a law firm that will guarantee you that if somebody in your family died from using that thing, you can actually get money from a lawsuit, which means it's been proven in court that it causes cancer. However, you can still go to one of the box stores or hardware store and buy that product. There are foods and all sorts of other things that are directly related to heart disease that are on the market, approved by the FDA. And you can go out and you can buy those things. There are drugs approved by the FDA that are advertised on your favorite television station, whether it's some left wing or right wing, doesn't matter what wing it is, okay? Tail wing. Approved by the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. And they'll tell you to take this drug, these commercials, and you see them all the time on TV, in newspapers, in magazines. And then a year later, you see a law firm. If you took this drug and you had this reaction, or someone in your family died because they took this drug, you're eligible for compensation from the law firm of such and such and such and such because of this class action suit or whatever the heck it is. The FDA has the worst track record of any organization in the world and probably in the history of mankind. And the news media, because they're just car salesmen and drug salesmen, that's all they are. They're in it for the money. These stories, this stuff, they love these plague stories. They love these rampages. They love these political stories because that's free content for them so that you get stooge and stay tuned to watch the commercials for the drugs that are going to kill you. And you say, oh, you can't even argue that fact. I guarantee you right now, I don't have TV anymore. Flip around. I guarantee you if you have TV and you have cable and networks, within a half hour time, flip around, you will see an ad for a drug, and you will see an ad, at least one, maybe more ads by law firms that are suing for previous drugs advertised and approved by the FDA and who were advertised on that same station that now have been proven to kill people or maim them or cause some sort of ridiculous side effects. And you trust the FDA and the CDC. See, that's surreal, right? But go on, if you want to be that way, and they got everybody scared to death. Instead of looking at the beauty of nature, living life, being happy, growing things, making love, using your five senses, experiencing life, listening to great music, embracing another person, right? I'm sure that people are afraid to kiss right now, thinking they're going to get sick. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, how they've done this in such a short period of time. Have we really become that susceptible as a society? I mean, I haven't. To me, that's why I put up the dolly thing. This is surreal. At this time, in our existence, took a long time for YouTube to put up. On there, I had the ever-changing season of Never, which was a line that I came up with when I was a kid, like in, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade, or maybe in high school. The ever-changing season of Never. Think about that. That's a mind blower. Yeah, life is surreal, and best you can do is ignore it, ignore it. Because you can't, it's like the old classic thing, you can't fight City Hall. Protests are just something for the news media to cover so they have free content so they could keep you tuned in for their car ads and their drug ads. Right? And of course, campaign ads every couple of years. Though I think pretty much the political process is over now. The corporatocracy seems to have taken over pretty much all of what was once Western civilization. The powers that be, these big tech, who now control big data, they're more powerful even than the CIA, the NSA, the DIA, and all those alphabet agencies you don't even know about. because they have their hands on all the data, all the information. You're a demographic profile to them. Where once you were cattle on a tax farm, now you're, they have you down. Now it's like they're already into predictive behavior type of thing, right out of sci-fi. They know so much stuff about you. I've talked before about, I get these things, I get an email from Google once a month that gives me the address of every place I've been over the past decade and a half or something like that. I just received my first one a little while ago, several months ago, but now I notice I'm getting them every month. There's a thing in there you can opt out of somehow. But like I tell people who are buy these VPNs or afraid of privacy and stuff, I rather know the information they're taking, they have on me, than try to pretend that if I opt out of something, like as if they're not going to still use that information. It's like people on Facebook. There's people on there, they think it's harmless. They post all these pictures and this, that, the other. Every bit of that data, they have control and use of that data. They can create such profiles on you. They know you better than if you were seeing a shrink, or your spouse knows you, or your parent knows you. They have such a detailed profile of every place you've been, everything you've ever purchased, everything you eat, the people you associate with, the things you've typed and texted, and the backspaces of the things you started to text, but then you deleted. Well, they keep those. Those are also saved. When you start to a post that you started to post, but you decided against and canceled it. Well, that's saved too. Imagine that. Every phone call. We all know, some people think that, this stuff isn't real. Like everything I'm saying now, every video, every phone call you make is basically, it's not recorded in the sense of like the old fashioned recording. We have the capabilities now with data storage that every conversation you have is basically recorded. Voice to text, filed. Things you say in your house, whether you have an Alexa or not. Okay. What was it, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they found Samsung TVs, or one of those brands. I don't want to say it was Samsung, so erase that. I don't want to, give the wrong name to somebody, but some TV brand. I think it was that. It may not have been. But it didn't even have a microphone. It wasn't even listed as having a microphone, and they found that the thing was recording people. Your computers, whether the green light's on for the camera or not, it could be turned on. Your phones are tracking you. If not GPS, it's the chips. And you say, well, okay, and then people get these burner phones, the ultimate paranoid person, but they don't realize they still have an ATM card, and the same chip. If you ever looked at the chip on your ATM card and the chip in your phone, it's the exact same thing. That's being triangularized through the cell towers. Of course, when you go in the store and you use it, they know you were at the store. The camera takes a picture of you. They've got a list of everything you purchased, the address of that store, right? The people who were in front of you and behind you, just in case you came with someone else. You see? That's the type of data they're collecting on everybody. And people are so clueless to that. So, they know everything about you. It's a corporatocracy. There's no government anymore. It's a business. And what happens when the people this breakaway civilization, which I talked about yesterday, when they've basically milked enough money out, enough trillions and trillions of dollars out of these countries like ours, our former United States, with irreconcilable differences, because we're never going to come back together. There's nothing to bring it back together. So what happens when they just say, well, okay, we got enough. We're just going to go do our stuff, play our games. We don't care anymore. The streets in Chicago are, nobody, is anyone really addressing the fact that there's major murders every weekend in Chicago and every day, New York City, Philadelphia? They're still rioting up in the Pacific Northwest. LA, California, out of control. You could go state by state. The crime figures are ridiculous. Nobody's talking about that. Yeah. But everybody's scared to death about catching a cold. Anyway, they was genuine downer, I have to admit. And if you made it through, I won't be doing this on a regular basis this way.
Good morning.
Because it is the morning show after all. I'm Tony Caravan, your host. And, I wish you the best of luck getting through this surreal world we live in. The end of my medium roast caffeine. Better times are ahead for you if you want it. It's just like that Lenin line, war is over if you want it. It's up to you. Hey, we got $3,200 and I used that to buy myself, things that will help me if there's a power outage. Soil for my raised bed gardens, things I needed for my house, some kind of spray sealant for my leaky roof from the inside out. So, you always, like that Monty Python thing, always look on the brighter side of life. Anyway, cheers. Take care. Thanks for watching. I'll be here.
Same time, same station.
Most likely. I had a good night's sleep last night, so feeling good. Almost didn't need to drink that caffeine. Kind of made me more wired than woke me up. Anyway, that's that. Take care. Cheers.